to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is the elephant in the room. And what we're talking about is how we often get acclimated to really egregious circumstances, circumstances that were it anyone else, we would be telling people, no, 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 that's unacceptable. And yet we adapt and then don't even notice this elephant in the room because we become so acclimated to it. So I think it'll be an interesting conversation, but before we get started, let's just take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome, and welcome to everybody else who's joining us. So today we're talking about the elephant in the room and how that elephant often becomes invisible, really. And we adjust our lives to navigate around it, and we actually forget that it's even there sometimes. So this conversation comes up due to a conversation that I had with a client about this is somebody who is very active as a change maker. And someone, welcome, Darlene. Darlene says hello from Michigan. Great to have you here with us, Darlene. So what this conversation was about their relationship and how it's not, they acknowledge that they have settled, and that what it sounded like to me was that it was sort of a sentence that they imposed on themselves for the rest of their lives, that this relationship that is not fulfilling, that they were just settling. And they have a commitment to stay in that relationship through the rest of their lives. And I said, well, if you're committed to staying in the relationship, what about like this commitment to settle? What if instead you made a commitment to make it a wonderful relationship? Like, what a concept. And the thing that's so fascinating is that in this commitment to settle, it became kind of invisible, and what they wanted to work on was all kinds of other stuff. And I said, well, this is primary in your life. How can you not address this? I mean, this is one place, it's a foundational place in your life. And what it brought to mind for me is that so many of us find experience limitation, and then we become acclimated to that limitation, and we go on in spite of it. And we don't even choose to address it, or we resign ourselves to things being as they are. And I'm not talking about allowing things to be as they are in terms of presence. What I'm talking about is the resignation that so many of us have about certain situations, and we allow ourselves to adapt. I mean, we're very adaptable creatures. And so we can adapt to all kinds of limitations, all kinds of challenges. And this is both a blessing and a curse, because in our adaptability, it's kind of like the story of the frog in the boiling water, where the and this is a horrible image, and I apologize for that. I'm not thinking of another one to replace it at the moment, but where little by little the temperature of the water is turned up and up and up, and before you know it, it's boiling water, and the frog is cooked. And that's what we do, is we adapt. And the egregiousness of the situation that we're adapting to becomes tamped down or moderated to such a degree that we don't even realize that it's as egregious a situation as it is. And I think we see that in our own lives, in our own adapting within our own lives to certain constraints or limitations or beliefs, even that maybe we believe that we're not capable of more, for example, or that we've reached, we tell ourselves all kinds of very destructive stories, right? Like that we've reached the limit of our ability, or that we're just not capable, or we're not good enough, or it's always going to be this way, or there's nothing I can do about it. And so when we settle, there is a little bit of a comfort in that, because then we don't have to keep trying, or we don't have to keep exploring. And I can recognize that there's some comfort in that, rather than maybe in some cases beating our heads against a brick wall, when maybe there is a futility to something, or that I'm a big advocate for being present and accepting what's so, but not accepting it necessarily and rolling over, but being present to what's so, in order that we can then recognize what opportunities might be available to create change, if that's what's desired. We can't get from A to B without knowing where A is, right? We can't chart a direction or a path until we know where we are. Because I can say I want to get to Michigan, but if I don't know where I am to start from, I can't chart a path, right? So that's what I'm talking about in terms of being present to what's so, because then we can move from that place rather than being in denial about where we are. But obliviousness, this elephant in the room that we choose to ignore, you know what? It reminds me of a story. It's a funny story. in my family. My brother has been an avid fisherman, and he had a boat at one point, and he had this, I think it was called isinglass, but what it is was plastic sort of windows that could protect from weather that you would put up on the boat. And it was expensive, and he had it laying on the floor of his bedroom so that it would remain flat. But meantime, anytime anybody went to the bedroom, he was like, be sure you don't step on that, walk around it, make sure you don't step on it. And he had it that way for years. And I guess I went into his bedroom at one point, and he was telling me, don't step on it, don't step on it. I said, well, why don't you put it under the bed to get it out of the way where it's protected? And it was a revelation, because it never occurred to him to actually essentially remove the elephant from the room or relocate the elephant so that it's not creating an obstruction. And we adapt. And for years, he'd been adapting and walking around this thing rather than addressing it. And it was an impediment. And rather than eliminating the impediment of it, he adapted to walking around it and was trying to enforce that adaptation on anybody else who came into that room. And I wonder if we look at our own lives where we've made adaptations and we're enforcing them on ourselves and others when there are alternatives, when we have the opportunity to say, wait a second, this needs to be addressed. There's got to be a better way to manage this. There's got to be a better way to deal with this. And I'm thinking of how we become casualties of our limiting beliefs. So this person comes to mind who, I think they were born with no legs. And for most people, that would be a severe limitation. That would be a constraint that defined life and would be crippling, literally crippling. And this person became a gymnast and was a tremendously accomplished gymnast. Now, their parents would not allow them to experience their lack of legs as a limitation. And this person accomplished things that two-legged people, many two-legged people never could or never would, in terms of becoming an athlete, a real athlete. And so we can so often become acclimated to the limitations that we define for ourselves or others define for us. And then we live out of that limitation and into excuses and into constraints that we have imposed on ourselves or have accepted for ourselves. And it broke my heart to have this client be willing, being such a dynamic human, and to have them be willing to condemn themselves to a relationship that was not satisfying to them, rather than, and to be committed to complacency in a way, rather than committed to generating this a new relationship, because they made the choice, I'm staying, but they made that choice sort of as a self-imposed sentence, rather than as an opportunity to create something that was worth staying for, staying out of guilt or fear, or staying because the alternative was just too uncomfortable to bear. And so just settling. And I think that it's so important for us to not just settle. And as far as the elephant in the room, I mean, look at the political context. At least in the political context right now, the elephant is making itself really apparent in so many ways, and knocking down furniture and soiling the rug, right? So it's waking people up to the fact that we have an elephant in the room, and that something needs to be done to manage the elephant. But it's amazing how complacent we had gotten to how much we were willing to accept along the way as this elephant was misbehaving. But it was gradual enough for so many of us that we were like, okay, well, we'll adapt to the elephant. Well, now there's the elephants running ramp and running roughshod. So now the elephant has to be dealt with, or at least we're aware that the elephant is there, right? And so our adaptability, once again, is our blessing and our curse. The phrase go along to get along is something that I think we need to question, and to hold ourselves to a higher standard. And Rosalind, I don't know if you're signing off. I'm glad you joined us. Thank you for being here, as always. I think we need to hold ourselves to higher standards for ourselves in our own lives, for what we're willing to accept. And I was looking at this in terms of family dynamics for myself, is we often don't speak our truths because it would ruffle feathers, because it would create waves. And a lot of us are averse to making waves, because when we threaten the status quo, we don't know what's going to happen. And one of the things I remember from personal development training that I took years ago was the statement that in order to have a relationship, you need to be willing to lose the relationship. And that statement has come back to me over the years to say, well, what does that mean? And what it means is that in order to have it, a relationship, a real relationship, it means risking the hard conversations. It means addressing the things that aren't working, to find a way. Like, it doesn't mean that the relationship is gonna end. It's that the real relationship, each time we make a concession, or each time that we become complacent, we end up pulling ourselves further and further away from being in relationship. And so we end up maybe living together, but the relationship itself is a shell. And in order to actually be in relationship, to have that relationship, those hard conversations need to be had. To say, hey, I'm not really happy. Are you happy? What can we do to create something that is life affirming for both of us? And those are hard conversations. It's a hard conversation to say, you know, when this happened, it really hurt. And to be able to be present to that opening up a can of worms, you know, because what happens is we keep putting worms in the can, right? We keep putting worms in the can, and eventually the can is so full that the worms are coming out anyway. So to be willing to address the things that are in the can before that can fills up is what allows us to actually be engaged with each other, to address the uncomfortable things. And to do so, hopefully, I mean, it takes consciousness. It takes consciousness, and it takes willingness, and it takes courage. It takes courage to address those things that could threaten the status quo, that could threaten, you know, that could start making waves. But the more we swallow, the more we accept, the more we adapt, the more we can end up losing ourselves. And when we open that can of worms, it often means turning a lens on ourselves. It's not, in a certain way, it's not about the other person ever, because it's always about how we're perceiving, how we're reacting, how we're responding, the beliefs that we're operating from, the filter that we're projecting from. And if there's a relationship, there is a give and take. And to be able, it takes skill and courage again, to be able to address the issues at hand in a way that forwards our actual intention. That in a relationship, for example, that's coming from a place of connection, at least the intention for connection, the intention of kindness and love, compassion, respect, to be coming from that place, even when there's upset. And not all relationships are reconcilable. I'm thinking of battered people who adapt to a situation that should not be adapted to, right? Someone hits you and they say, "I'm sorry." And then it happens again and again, and it escalates. That's another situation of the frog in the boiling water. We adapt. And sometimes it's important not to adapt. The challenge is the discernment that it takes to know, or to be willing to make the hard choice when we need to. So the elephant in the room, I invite all of us to look at what are the elephants in the room that we have completely ignored, and yet we have modified our whole lives to work around those elephants. So that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to please like, follow, and share Enlightened World Network and me. The links are in the description. And as always, it is my pleasure and privilege to have the opportunity to share these morning musings with you. And until next time.